Hi, this is Lee. I was going to do a video for Patricia. Patricia wants to know how to create this design, but she wants the white space here to be the same width as the black space. So, of course, in Inkscape there's always a million different ways to do something, but I was going to show one way that you could do this. Okay. So let me close some things. The first thing we want to do is draw the hexagon. So I'm going to come over here to these tools and I'm going to click on this one, create stars and polygons. Okay, now there's two options. You can create a star, which is going to be like that, or you can create a polygon, which is going to have straight sides. And we want the polygon. We want it to have 6 corners. We don't want it to be rounded at all. This has rounded corners, but rounding to draw the polygons is different. It curves the sides. We don't want the sides curved. We're going to want the corners curved. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But right now, 6 corners, not rounded, and polygon. I'm going to hold down the Control and Shift key to keep it rotated properly. Okay, for some reason it's still giving me rounded, so I'm just going to go back and change that to 0. Okay, and now I am going to hold down the Shift and Control and rotate it. All right, and I'm just going to make it bigger. All right, so now you can see we have got a hexagon. It's filled. It doesn't have a stroke. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the fill off and turn the stroke on. So to turn the fill off, I'm just going to come down here to the color palette and click on the X to give it a transparent fill. And then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click on black to give it a black outline or black stroke. Now, if I double click on this, you can see it's only got one node. And that means it's a shape. If I was to go up here and do path, object to path, and now double click on it, now it's turned it into a path. It's a path that just has a stroke outline. And if I go up to view, display mode, outline, you can see it's just one path. All right. So I'm going to go back to view, display mode, normal. And we're going to change the thickness of this stroke or outline so that it's closer to the thickness of this one. To do that, I'm going to open the fill panel by pressing Control Shift F. Okay, the fill panel opens. We have fill, stroke paint, and stroke style. We're going to click on stroke style and we're going to change the width of this stroke. I'm going to try 100 pixels. Okay. Now that looks pretty good. You can of course change the sizes and dimensions to be, I'm not sure exactly what Patricia's going for, but we'll just go with this size right here. So as you can see, this shape has pointy corners, as I talked about before, and the one over here that we want to replicate has rounded corners. So I'm just going to come over here to the join menu on the stroke style, and you can see there's different corner options. We can have beveled corners, we could have sharp corners, or we can have rounded corners. So I'm going to click the rounded corners. All right. So now, the next thing we want to do is we want to pull out some guides from the side. Because this is still a path, if I try to pull out a guide, and I've got a lot, pretty much turn on all of your snapping tools. If they're off, they're going to be white like this or grayed out. And to turn them on, you just basically go through and click until they are all showing up blue. You don't really need, a lot of these we're going to use. You don't need this one, snap midpoints of segments, and you don't need snap to grids, and you don't need any of the snap text anchors. But we do need a lot of these other ones turned on. So now if I was to pull a guide out, let me click back on the selector tool and then go over here and click on this side ruler and pull a guide. It'll snap it to that outside because that's the outside bounding box. But I also want to pull a guide out and snap it to the inside. And it won't do that right now. It wants to snap it to the line, which if you look and see, if I double click on that, it's right on the line that the nodes make. And that's not what I want. I want to pull one out so it's exactly right there on that side of the hexagon. So I'm going to hover over that and press delete to delete that guide. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this object, this path, into the stroke path into a path. And so what I do with it selected, I go up to path, stroke to path. Now if I double click on it, you see it's got, instead of having nodes just at each of the 6 corners, it's got nodes on either side. And if I was to go to View, Display Mode, Outline, now you can see that there's actually 2 paths there, an inner path and an outer path. Okay, that will allow me to pull a guide out. So View, Display Mode, back to normal. And now I'm going to come over here and pull another guide out and snap it right there. Alright, now what I want to do is I want to draw a rectangle that's the exact same width as this black part here. So I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to turn the fill to red. Whoops. Let me draw a rectangle first. I'm going to turn the fill to red and hold down Shift and click on the X to give it no stroke. And then I'm just going to come over here and snap that to the side, and then I'm going to use so you get it exactly the same width as the black line. And we're going to use this as a ruler. So I'm going to take that and move it over and snap it to the inside of that. And then I'm going to take the ruler and pull out another guide and snap it to the edge of that. Okay, we can get rid of that red rectangle now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this hexagon and then click again to give the rotation handles and the rotation center. And now I'm going to pull out another guide from the top and click right to the center, and another guide from the side and click that to the center. That gives us the center of this hexagon. And now I'm going to also click on the hexagon, the polygon shape tool again, and I'm just basically going to draw another one, pulling up like this until it snaps to that guideline that we pulled out. Now again, this one is filled, and we want it to have a stroke, not a fill. So I'm going to come down here and click X to turn off the fill, hold down Shift, and I'm going to click a blue color for the stroke. Now on the example, this one actually has pointy corners, so we can go back here and change that to pointy. And this one is a smaller, it's not as thick, so we can go back and we can change the width of the stroke to, I don't know, like 60. So that looks pretty good. You can see that it's not on our line anymore, so what we can do is just hold down Control and Shift and then drag and snap it to that line again. Now we have the width, white space that we wanted. Okay, so there is that. Now if we want to put a gradient on this, we can. So right now if I click on it and double click, you can see it's still a shape. It's still an octagon polygon shape. So again, we'll go to Path, Object to Path, and now if I double click on it, you can see it's got 4 nodes. So now it's a stroke. So we'll do Path, Stroke to Path. Now it's a path, and if I was to go to View, Display Mode, Outline, now you can see we have this outer one that's got 2 paths, an inner path and an outer path, and this one who's also got an inner path and an outer path. So go back to normal mode. Now, whoops, I don't know what that is. If I want to make this into a gradient, now I go back over to my fill and stroke and I click on fill instead of stroke. And now I can click on the gradient here, linear gradient. Alright, that gave me a gradient. Blue go into white, which is not exactly the way this one is. So let's go over here and click on the gradient tool. It's right under the paint bucket. Now a line comes up that runs through. Let me delete this. No, let me delete this guide so you can see that there's a line that runs through it. Whoops. Try that again. It's not letting me delete it. Oh well, I've moved it, so that'll work. Alright, so now back on this, click on the gradient tool, and you can see that it gives me a line that goes through the middle that's got a square on this end and a circle on the other. Those are the 2 colors of my gradient. If I click on this one, now over here in the fill panel it pops up and shows me the characteristics of that color. I can click on this eyedropper tool, and then come over here to the original picture and click right there to pick up that exact blue color. And then I can do the same thing for this gradient stop. I click on that to select it, back over here to the eyedropper tool, and then I can click on this color blue, and that changed the color of my gradient. Now this gradient here goes from corner to corner, not straight across. All I have to do is click on this guy and move him up here, and then click on this guy and move him down here, and there is our gradient for that. Now this outer hexagon is two different colors. You can see it's split right down the middle. We already have a middle guideline here, so that's perfect. Let's take the rectangle tool again, draw a rectangle that snaps right to that center line, and then hold down the shift to turn off the stroke. Alright, so I'm just going to check and make sure it's right on that center, and it is. So with the rectangle selected and the hexagon selected, I'm going to go up to Path, Division. Alright, now you can see that divided my hexagon into two pieces. I'm going to do Control Z for undo to put them back where they were. Now if I click on this one, again I can go to the fill panel, click on the eyedropper, and pick up that gray color. And there we go. So that is how I would do this. I would just basically use snap tools and guidelines to get the proportions of the negative and the filled spaces to be the way I wanted them to be. So hopefully that gave you some tips and some new tools to try out. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.